Everyday life is built on routines. Morning coffee, a bus ride to school, just a quick trip to see a grandmother. But sometimes those ordinary moments, they crack open and reveal something far darker. In tonight's episode, we're traveling across North Carolina to revisit five disappearances. Each one began with something simple, like grabbing a drink at a bar, waiting for a school bus, or attending a church service, or maybe helping a friend or visiting family. Yet each one ended the same way, with a life vanishing into thin air, and a trail of eerie, unanswered clues is all that's left. It's November 1981. Darlene, a young woman who had recently gone through a divorce, had moved to Hollywood, Florida. She was living with a new boyfriend, his name Phil Parcelli, a real estate broker, known to his family and friends as Skip. The two of them made the long drive from sunny Florida all the way to Durham, North Carolina for Thanksgiving to visit Darlene's parents. The holiday was going as planned, a cozy, normal visit. But before the big Thanksgiving dinner could even be served, Darlene and Skip, they decided to make a quick trip across town. They wanted to visit Darlene's grandmother, so they hopped in their rental car, waved goodbye, and set off for what should have been a very short drive. For a few days, Darlene's family assumed the pair had simply changed their plans. After all, her personal belongings and her packed clothes were still at her parents' house. But as the days passed and no phone calls came in, a cold knot of fear began to form in the family's stomachs. Darlene was officially reported missing, but strangely enough, a missing persons report for Phil Parcelli was never filed. Then, a few days after they vanished, the discovery was made. Their rental car was found hundreds of miles away. That's south of the border. You know, that famous roadside attraction on I-95 that straddles the North Carolina and South Carolina state lines. When investigators arrived at the scene, the car offered almost nothing. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no shattered glass, nothing that pointed to foul play. But inside the otherwise clean vehicle, there was a single terrifying clue. A belt buckle with the emblem of the Outlaws motorcycle gang. Now, if you don't know the Outlaws, they're not your average riding club. They're violent. A one-percenter motorcycle gang with a reputation for drug trafficking, extortion, and other brutal crimes. So to find one of their emblems in an abandoned car belonging to two missing people, well, that most likely isn't a coincidence. That's probably a message. Darlene's family was devastated. Her father completely consumed by the mystery. Well, he spent years of his life looking for his daughter. He hired private detectives, followed every rumor, and chased leads from Tennessee to Florida. But every lead went cold. Today, more than 4 decades later, both Helen Darlene Fuller and Phil Skip Parcelli, they're still missing. The case, it's gone cold, leaving behind nothing but questions. What happened on that short drive to a grandmother's house? Why was their car found hundreds of miles away at a tourist trap? And what did that belt buckle really mean? Were Darlene and Skip victims of a crime? Or were they somehow involved with people who left that chilling calling card? The answers remain lost, just like Darlene and Skip, somewhere on a lonely stretch of highway. Now we're talking about a case that just starts with a simple act of kindness, the kind of thing any one of us might do for a friend. But in the small town of Garland, North Carolina, a good deed led to a complete and utter vanishing. This is the mystery of Judith Devers Hyder. It was a cold Monday evening on December 7th, 2015. Judith, a 55-year-old woman who lived in the quiet town of Garland, she was home when she got a phone call. A friend needed help. Their truck wouldn't start. And without a second thought, Judith grabbed her keys, got in her car, and drove to meet them. It was a short trip, a quick fix. She'd be back home in a flash. But Judith never came home. Days went by with no word from Judith. Her family grew frantic, and a missing persons report was filed. And as investigators began to search, a bizarre discovery was made. Just a couple of houses down from Judith's own home. Her car was found. It was parked behind a row of bushes, intentionally hidden from view. There were no signs of a struggle or foul play in the vehicle, but the location itself, well, that was unsettling. Why would her car be parked so close to her own home and still intentionally concealed? It was a clue that made absolutely no sense. Soon the days turned into weeks. The mystery, it only deepened. Police confirmed that Judith had a medical condition and was in need of medication. Raising the urgency of the search, family and friends spoke of her as a kind and helpful woman, making her disappearance all the more baffling. Who would want to harm her? The North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation joined in on the case, and a $5,000 reward has been offered for information leading to an arrest. But despite all the efforts, there's been no sign of Judith. There's been no new leads, no suspect named, and no answers. The case itself remains a cold trail of breadcrumbs, a phone call from a friend, a short trip, an intentionally hidden car, and chilling questions that still hang in the air. What happened on that short drive, just a few feet from home? And just who exactly was Judith supposed to meet? The Bladen County Sheriff's Department continues to investigate. If you have any information, please contact them at 910-862-6960. The following story is one of the most frustrating kinds, a puzzle with almost no pieces. A good man, surrounded by his friends and community, vanishes on a Sunday morning, dressed in his Sunday best. We're going back to June 15th, 1975. Just happened to be Father's Day that year. Rocky Mount, North Carolina. This is the case of Calvin Brazier. Calvin was a 71-year-old gentleman from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he was a dedicated member of his church, North Providence Baptist. On this particular Sunday, he traveled by bus with his church group down to North Carolina to attend a gospel music program at the Joy Hope Holy Church. Now picture this scene. It's 11 in the morning. Church is either just starting or maybe it's a break between services. Calvin is dressed impeccably, as was fitting for the occasion. A dark blue suit, a crisp white shirt, a striped tie, and a perfect brown hat. A sharp-looking man, slightly built, just around 5'7" tall. He also had a small distinguishing features, One of his eyes was partially closed. Calvin was last seen leaving the church grounds on the 100 block of Bennett Street. He was alone, and he was on foot. And that's where the story stops. He was never heard from again. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't some remote hiking trail. This wasn't a crowded, chaotic city center. This was just a Sunday morning in a small, quiet town. This was an elderly man dressed for church, walking out of the building where his entire traveling party was located. The details available in this case are stunningly few, which only deepens the mystery. The big question is, where was Calvin going? Why did he leave the group? Did he have a sudden medical emergency? At 71, it's possible. Maybe he fell ill and was walking somewhere specific. Maybe to a pharmacy or a payphone to call a relative. But if that's so, why didn't he say anything to anyone in the group? Why is there no trace of him found anywhere? The church location on Bennett Street, near an area today that is close to old railroad tracks and appears somewhat isolated, it raises another unsettling possibility. Was he targeted? Was he walking toward a nearby street or a business that was known to be dangerous? Was he simply trying to run an errand? Was he mistaken for someone else? Or was Calvin a victim of an opportunist who saw an old man alone? The simplest explanation is he got lost. But given his age, his dress, and the fact he was surrounded by people who knew he was there, it's chilling that no one, no parishioner, no bystander, no one saw anything that could provide a single clue about the direction he took. To this day, Calvin Brazzer's case remains classified as an endangered missing person. He walked out on a bright Sunday morning from a gospel concert and simply disappeared into the summer air, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a community that never really stopped looking for him. You hear the same routine every morning. The distant sound of a school bus, the closing of a front door, the start of a normal day. But sometimes that routine is shattered, leaving behind a terrifying, inexplicable void. Today we're talking about a case that begins at a high school bus stop. This is the story of Kimberly Thrower. Kimberly, or Kim as her friends called her, was a 16-year-old girl living in Laurinburg, North Carolina. On the morning of April 29th, 2004, she was doing what hundreds of thousands of students across the country do every day. She was heading to school. Specifically, she was waiting at the bus stop on Stevens Circle, intending to go to Scotland High School. She was petite, only about 5'5", easy to recognize, a young Native American girl with brown hair, light brown eyes, and distinct piercings on her ears and tongue. It was exactly 7 a.m. when the one crucial detail in this case was witnessed. Someone saw Kim at that bus stop. They saw her interact with an African American male. According to the witness, the man placed his arm around Kim, and then, in a move that has baffled investigators for over 2 decades, the pair simply walked away from the street and into the woods together. Kimberly never arrived at school that day. She was never heard from again. Now, what makes this case so agonizing for her family is the immediate response. Because of the sighting, the fact that she walked with a male companion, authorities, well, they initially classified the case as a runaway. The assumption was that she went off with someone she knew, possibly a boyfriend, and she would be back. But as the days turned into weeks, and weeks, well, they unfortunately turned into years, that hope has faded into a cold, hard silence. Kim had left her family, her community, and her life behind, and not a single verifiable trace of her existence has surfaced since. How does a 16-year-old runaway go without reaching out to anyone? For over 21 years. It just doesn't sit right. Due to the passage of time and the complete lack of contact, authorities are now re-examining this case, understanding that this is far more likely a serious crime than a simple runaway situation. The questions are chilling. Who was that man? Did she go willingly into the woods, only to be trapped by circumstances she couldn't control? Or was she lured into a situation that ended her life just a few feet from her regular bus route? We don't know the answers. All we have is a final terrifying moment that a teenager walked away from her life into the woods on a quiet school morning. Kimberly Thrower's case remains unsolved. If you have any information, please contact the Scotland County Sheriff's Office, 910-276-3385. Now let's head over to another small town with a big mystery. This story starts in a place where everyone knows your name, but ends with a scene that feels like something out of a crime thriller. We're talking about the strange and unsettling disappearance of Robert Connor. Robert was a 61-year-old man from Claremont, North Carolina. He was a creature of habit. He had his routines, his friends, his favorite spot, the Boxcar Grill. And on the evening of July 18th, 2003, he was doing exactly what he always did, sitting at the bar. He was last seen there, a place where people felt safe and familiar. But something happened between the time he left the bar and the way his family found his home days later. 6 days after he was last seen, a family member, unable to reach him, decided to check on him at his home. The scene she found there was just plain wrong. It was a picture of a man who vanished not in an instant, but from a life that was still running on autopilot. First, there was the dog, Robert's constant companion, a dachshund named Rusty. Rusty was left all alone, hungry and frantic. This was a man who adored his dog, a man who wouldn't leave his best friend unattended for that long. Then there were the messages. His telephone answering machine had 14 unheard messages on it, all unanswered. His mailbox was overflowing with unopened letters. It was as if he'd gone for a while, and then the normal flow of his life had piled up, just waiting for him to return. And the truck, his pickup, was parked in an unusual, odd spot for him at his house. Why would he leave it there like that? Was someone else driving it? Or was he not the one who parked it there at all? But the most odd or strange detail was discovered inside the house. A .357 Magnum handgun that Robert always kept under his couch. It was missing. It was his protection, his security. Was he so threatened he took it with him? or did someone take it? The circumstances of his disappearance are entirely unknown. Robert Connor didn't just walk away. He left behind a trail of eerie breadcrumbs that suggest foul play. Who was the last person to see him besides that bartender? Why did his life stop so abruptly while everything else around him continued on? The police interviewed a man named John Franklin Dixon, who was supposed to be the last person to have seen Robert, but no useful information came from that conversation. The case has gone cold, and Robert Connor's whereabouts are still unknown. If you have any information, please contact the Catawba Sheriff's County office at 828-465-8349. What's most chilling about these stories, it isn't just that these people disappeared. It's how normal their final moments seemed. A routine errand, a short walk, just a quick stop on the road, then nothing. Somewhere along the line, the ordinary became extraordinary. And that's what makes these mysteries so haunting. Because if it could happen to them in their familiar worlds, it could happen to us at anywhere, at any time. This has been Tim with the Bucklesberry Lemonade. Until next time, good night.